تبسم وخل الهموم وخل الغموم وخل الضجر ولا تبتئس من صروف الزمان ولا تشتكي من طعون البشر.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jummah Mubarak to all the Muslims and of course to the ITV viewers out there throughout the country. On behalf of the Imams, the officials and the Muslims of Masjid Abu Bakr Siddiq, I have great pleasure in welcoming a dynamic young man to talk to you this afternoon. Mohammed Desai is the National Coordinator of BDS. If by now you don't know what BDS stands for, let me spell it out to you. Boycott, divestment and sanctions. Something that I am very familiar with, and I suppose the young people are not. However, what is very, very encouraging is that we see hundreds of young people coming to the forefront and driving this campaign. Let me remind you that this is not just a national campaign, but an international campaign. And Mohammed Desai, he tells me, after he matriculated, he spent close on to 3 months in Palestine, experiencing what the locals experience every day. I still thought he's at school, nevertheless, he's still a very young man. Nevertheless, he will talk to you this afternoon. He will explain to you what BDS is all about. And it is very, very important that we take cognizance of the fact that this is a powerful tool, a powerful weapon. Withholding your purchases, withholding you spending money on certain things, which he will identify today, which we are to abstain from and not come near. Without further ado, Mohammed.
It's like us preparing for a military mission. The mission is just BDS, which I'll explain in a second. Fathers, brothers, we've just left the auspicious month of Ramadan, a month in which we learn about the need, necessity and obligation for us to be giving and for us to be generous, and how this brings us closer to Allah Ta'ala. But another need, necessity and obligation that we also learn about in Islam in general and also in Ramadan in particular is that need, necessity and obligation for us to fight against injustice where we see it. The Prophet ﷺ was both a man of peace and dialogue, but also unapologetically a man of the sword that fought against injustice, somebody who stood up against injustices around him. And today, one of the greatest injustices that we see is the Israeli regime of occupation, oppression, and what some people are describing as genocide against the Palestinian people. We have just witnessed on our TV screens, we have seen over 1,900 people being killed in a month, in less than 30 days. 350 of them. That's more than the entire gathering here today. 350 of them, children under the age of 16 years old. That is one child. That is one son or daughter a day that Israel killed in just 1 month. This is the kind of brutality that we see. This is the kind of brutality that we hear about. The question is, what can we do about this? The question is, how do we lend our solidarity to the Palestinian people? And the answer really, in many ways, is captured in 3 letters. BDS. Boycott, divestment, and sanctions. But how did we get here? How did we get to the BDS movement? Well, the single most significant event to have taken place in the last decade for Palestinian solidarity took place in 2005. In 2005, in June 2005, you had the largest, broadest, and most representative grouping of Palestinian civil society. So we're talking about trade unions, youth organizations, women's groups, the national and Islamic forces, all gathering in Ramallah, in the West Bank, and issuing a call to the international community. Important to note is that it was the Palestinians themselves that made this call for a program of boycott, divestment, and sanctions to be applied against Israel. This call was made to you, to me, to those of us that make up the global community. And when the Palestinians made this call, they made 3 demands. First demand was for Israel to end its occupation and dismantle the wall. The second demand was for Israel to respect the right of return for Palestinian refugees who are currently scattered in their millions in neighboring countries. And the third demand was for full equality for Palestinian citizens living inside Israel. I'm mentioning these demands in detail because of 2 reasons. Firstly, as an indication that when this call was made, that when the BDS movement was launched in 2005, it captured all 3 main Palestinian populations: those living in the occupied territories, those 20% of the Israeli population, those are living inside Israel, and the over 5 million living as refugees. But the second reason that I'm mentioning these demands is because what you saw is you saw a shift from, say, my father's generation, or the generation of Uncle KK and others. You saw a shift because that generation held a principal boycott against Israel. Anything from Israel, anything to do with Israel, we terminate relations, we stay away from. But with these 3 demands and with this call coming from the Palestinians, you saw a shift from a principled boycott against Israel to a strategic and focused campaign to hold Israel accountable for its violations of international law. And with this strategic and focused approach, between 2005 to now, so in less than 9 years, we have major and significant victories and gains for the BDS movement. You have, for example, the Dutch pension fund, Swedish pension fund, Norwegian pension fund, all divesting from Israel. You have a private equity fund, Supernova fund in New Zealand, divesting from Israel. You have Israel's largest exporter of fresh produce, called Grexco, going into complete bankruptcy because of active BDS campaigning in the cities of Rome, Paris, London, and elsewhere. You have the University of Johannesburg locally in South Africa that terminated its relationship with Israel in 2011. You have, subsequent to the UJ victory, to the UJ academic boycott of Israel victory, a first in the world really. You have various universities in South Africa, the University of Witwatersrand, SRC, the UCT's, Student Council, and various other university structures that have adopted academic boycott of Israel resolutions. You have Carsten Farms, an agricultural company in the Northern Cape that used to have a trade relationship with Israel. After a 3-year campaign which BDS South Africa, the local chapter that I am part of, was involved in, after a 3-year campaign, we have Carsten Farms giving us a legal undertaking that they will terminate relations with Hadi Klaim, the Israeli cooperative, which they had this trade relationship with, as well as commitment that they won't enter into any future relations with Israel. And so you have this growing movement, you have these victories across the world, but what is its impact on Israel? Well, Israel takes the BDS movement so seriously, even though it's only a 9-year-old movement, that Israel's Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, in February this year, convened a meeting of all his cabinet ministers. And the big question on the table was, how do we challenge and undermine the BDS movement? They adopted certain things. Firstly, they adopted a resolution to commit the Israeli government, to spend 100 million shekels, it's about 300 million rands, to fight the BDS movement. They also set aside money for intelligence services to be run on the BDS activists around the world. In addition, and this was quite telling, Netanyahu and his cabinet moved the responsibility for countering BDS from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, which deals with propaganda and diplomacy and PR, from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to the Ministry of Strategic Affairs, the ministry that deals with this, with the Iranian threat or the nuclear threat, etc. So this is how seriously the Israeli government is taking the BDS challenge. When Netanyahu went to AIPAC, this Israeli lobby in the USA, he mentioned BDS over 71 times in one speech. So the question then is, how do ordinary members of the public, how do members of the community get involved in this campaign? I come from an organization called BDS South Africa, a chapter that has started up in this country about 4 years ago to advance the BDS campaign. It's a full-time organization to take on the Israeli lobby in this country, but also to score significant gains within government, within the private sector, and elsewhere. But we need the assistance of our communities. And I'm going to leave you behind with three things, three campaigns that we need your involvement, active involvement in. The first campaign is a campaign against SodaStream. SodaStream is an Israeli company. It's not only an Israeli company, it's an Israeli settlement company. It's one of those companies that are headquarters or has operations in one of those Jewish-only settlements. Now, SodaStream it's a fizzy drink. You buy the machine, you buy the liquid, you take it home, and you make home carbonated drinks. You may say, well, I don't buy SodaStream. How does it affect me? The BDS campaign is not about just refraining from buying a certain product. In fact, we discourage those lists of 50 or 100 different products that are connected to another 100 different companies. Because if we have to spread ourselves so thin, our chances of having an impact on these companies are lessened. And so rather we focus in on certain campaigns, we go from victory to victory, goal to goal. And what we are calling on the community to assist us with is, whilst you may not be using SodaStream yourself, you definitely go to a supermarket, be it Macro, Spar, Checkers, ShopRite, or anything else that stocks these SodaStream products. Engage with the managers, engage with the shop owners, and insist on them that these products need to be removed, that the SodaStream needs to be removed from their shelves. And one of the reasons why we're going after SodaStream, it's not an arbitrary decision, is because SodaStream is losing sales, is losing its market share overseas. In fact, on the New York Stock Exchange, SodaStream dropped by 14% due to active BDS campaigning. However, the CEO in a Business Day article last year spoke about how Southern Africa, and South Africa in particular, are going to be emerging markets that SodaStream wants to intensify its operations in. So SodaStream is the one product that we are putting out there, the one company that we are putting out there. But the second company is Woolworths. Woolworths has a trade relationship with Israel, and we are calling on members of the community to join us not only in complaining and writing to the manager and organizing protests and pickets. We are calling on the community to even withdraw their consumer support for Woolworths. Because what we realized in the last 2 or 3 weeks, when we took the decision to call for a complete boycott of Woolworths, is that we do have the consumer power in this campaign to hit Woolworths hard, to hit it quick, and to get it to terminate those relations with Israel. People are asking us why not other companies, why not Checkers, for example, or any other company that's out there. Well, the reason that we are selecting Woolworths is because Woolworths itself claims to be this ethical and responsible company. And so our argument to Woolworths has been, in the last 3 or 4 weeks that we are engaging with the company, is that surely your ethics needs to extend into a respect for human rights and into a respect for the human rights of the Palestinian people. Woolworths stock prices, this is unconfirmed, but it is an analysis that was given to us, has dropped by 6%. Has dropped by 6% since the launch of the Boycott Woolworths campaign. We need to intensify this year, and we do hope that once Woolworths terminates its relationship with Israel, that this will send shockwaves across the retail industry, sending a very clear message to other supermarkets. If you're going to continue to stock those Israeli products, you're going to have the sort of backlash from the community. So Woolworths is the second campaign. The third campaign is G4S, Group for Security. Now, G4S is an international company that has operations inside Israel. What are these operations? Well, G4S runs the prison systems, detention facilities, and torture centers, which house Palestinian political prisoners. From its global revenues, G4S's profits from Israel account for 1%. And so what we are doing is we are making it costly for G4S in other countries because of its contract and its relations in Israel. And it's proven to be a successful campaign. 2 months ago, you had the Methodist Church pulling out all its shares from G4S after being approached by the BDS movement. You have Bill Gates, the richest person on this earth. Bill Gates divesting 2 million rands worth of shares and investments from G4S after BDS South Africa and other organizations had approached the Bill Gates Foundation. G4S has indicated after almost a 2-year campaign that they will now withdraw their operations from Israel within 3 years. But we are telling them that that's not fast enough, that's not soon enough, and you are still remaining complicit in the prison system that Israel is running, because you are receiving profits from the maintenance and from the running of these prisons. And so this is an appeal to business people, property owners, shopkeepers, hardware store owners that may be using G4S. There are several other alternatives that can be used, but also this is an appeal also to the ordinary person on the street. Whilst you may not be contracting with G4S, you most probably do go to a butchery, bakery, or supermarket or other place that uses G4S. Explain to them the reasons why there's a boycott on G4S. Explain to them the reasons why they need to terminate their relations with G4S. We do have paraphernalia outside with more information on these 3 campaigns. I'm going to end off on a short story. And that is a story of a Palestinian grandmother who had lost her home in one of these Israeli house demolitions. And when she lost her home, this was in Jerusalem, it was a few years back, and it's documented by the Israeli Committee Against House Demolitions. When she lost her home, aid workers rushed up to her to ask her to provide assistance to her. And they went up to her wanting to provide her with aid, wanting to provide her with shelter, and she refused. She turned them away. They went a second time, they went a third time offering this assistance. She chased them away. Later on, ICAD, the Israeli Committee Against House Demolitions, asked her, but why did you turn away these aid workers? And she responded saying that Palestinians are not the victims of a natural disaster. They're not the victims of an earthquake or a tsunami. They are the victims of an Israeli occupation. That is the root cause of their suffering. That is the root cause of their problem. And BDS, boycott, divestment, and sanctions, allows us to go to that root cause, to hold Israel accountable for its violations of international law, to isolate Israel, to cut it off from the international community, similarly to how apartheid South Africa was once cut off. And so this is also an invitation then to all members of the community to join us in one of the fastest growing international campaigns of our time, one of the most fashionable places for people to be. It never used to be this fashionable. It was COSATU and a few other organizations initially in South Africa that had first endorsed the BDS campaign. But it's growing at the supersonic speed, and this is really an invitation to one and all to join us in this concrete campaign to hold Israel accountable. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Jazakallah, Mohammed, for enlightening us about the BDS campaign. This is a sincere appeal to all of you that are listening to this or have listened to this particular talk delivered by Mohammed. Please, we urge you to embrace the BDS campaign. And we have a great opportunity. One day you can tell your children that we had a hand in bringing down Israeli apartheid. It's a great opportunity. We're not asking for more. They've worked out, there's method in their activities, there's focus in the BDS activities. That is why we're focusing currently on 3 particular products and 3 projects. We need to adhere to this very, very strictly. I know there are other brothers and sisters that are encouraging the boycott of Coke and what have you. By all means, don't drink Coke. You won't miss it. It won't add life in your life. You don't need it. But let us pay full attention and full focus on the BDS campaign. And once again, thanks to Mohammed and the rest of his team. They're doing sterling work. And I can assure you, and I speak on behalf of everybody, that you've got our full backing, inshallah, and may you go from strength to strength and success, inshallah. Jazakallah.
تبسم وخل الهموم وخل الغموم وخل الضجر.